The most expensive sound in the world isn't a crashing Ferrari or a stock market crash. It is the silence in a boardroom when a man's entire life stops. I was holding a glass of 50-year-old scotch, standing at the head of a mahogany table, looking at men who feared me. My phone buzzed once. Just once. I usually ignore it, but the ID said Mercy Hospital ER. I answered. A nurse's voice, trembling, whispered 4 words that shattered my world. "Mr. Julian, please hurry." The glass slipped from my fingers. It didn't break when it hit the thick carpet, but the sound of it rolling was the only thing I heard before I started running. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I don't remember leaving the building. I don't remember getting into my Aston Martin. I only remember the blur of city lights and the roar of the engine redlining as I tore through red lights. I am a man who solves problems. I build skyscrapers. I buy companies. I crush competitors. I have billions of dollars in the bank and contacts in the Pentagon. But driving to that hospital, gripping the leather steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, I was nobody. I was just a terrified father. When I burst through the double doors of the emergency room, the smell hit me first. Antiseptic, bleach, and old blood. A young nurse intercepted me before I could tear the place apart looking for her. "Mr. Julian?" she asked, her eyes wide. She looked like she wanted to cry. "She's in trauma room 4. "But sir, you need to prepare yourself." Prepare myself? I was a Marine sniper for 12 years before I put on a suit. I've seen war. I've seen bodies torn apart by IEDs in the desert. I've seen the life leave a man's eyes through a high-powered scope from a mile away. I thought nothing could shock me. I was wrong. I walked into that room, and my knees almost gave out. Lila. My beautiful, sweet Lila. She was lying on the bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped in a slow, terrifying rhythm. Her face. God. Her face was a map of violence. Her left eye was swollen shut, purple and angry. Her lip was split. There were bruises blooming on her neck like dark flowers, the distinct shape of fingers pressed into her pale skin. She looked so small. "Lila," I whispered, reaching out to touch her hand. Her fingers were cold. She was sedated, lost in a chemical sleep. A doctor walked in, looking exhausted. He held a clipboard against his chest like a shield. "Mr. Julian, I'm Dr. Evans. Tell me she's okay," I said, my voice sounding like gravel. "Tell me my daughter and my grandchild are okay." The silence stretched out again. That same deadly silence from the boardroom. Dr. Evans looked down at his shoes, then met my eyes. "We had to perform emergency surgery," he said softly. "The trauma to her abdomen was severe. Several kicks, or perhaps blunt force trauma. We stopped the internal bleeding, sir. Lila will survive." "And the baby?" I asked. The air left the room. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "There was no heartbeat when she arrived. The baby is gone." I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I just stood there, feeling a coldness spread through my chest that I hadn't felt since my last tour in Afghanistan. My grandson, the baby Lila had been so excited about. The nursery was already painted yellow. The crib was assembled. Gone. Murdered before he ever took a breath. "Who did this?" I asked. The soldier was waking up inside me. The CEO was fading away. "The police are in the waiting room," the doctor said. "Detective Miller." I walked out of the trauma room. I found Detective Miller leaning against the wall, chewing gum, looking at his phone. He didn't look like a man on a mission. He looked like a man waiting for his shift to end. He saw my suit, my watch, and he straightened up a little, but the smirk didn't fully leave his face. "Mr. Julian," Miller said. "Rough night." Rough night. I stepped into his personal space. My daughter was beaten half to death. She lost her child. "Who did it?" Miller sighed, scratching the back of his neck. "Look, we're still taking statements. From what we hear, it was a wild party. The penthouse at the St. Regis. Lots of alcohol, lots of drugs floating around." "Lila doesn't drink," I said coldly. "She was pregnant." "Yeah, well," Miller shrugged. "Witnesses say she was acting erratic. Leading guys on. We have names. But it's a he said, she said situation right now. No cameras in the VIP room. What names? I demanded. Miller hesitated. Blake and Preston. You know the families. I froze. I knew them. Blake was the son of Senator Thorne. Preston was the heir to the Kincaid tech empire. These were boys who grew up in mansions, boys who had never heard the word no in their lives, boys whose fathers played golf with the police commissioner. You haven't arrested them, I said. It wasn't a question. We can't just arrest boys like that on an accusation, Mr. Julian, Miller said, his voice dropping low. We need solid evidence. And right now, all we have is a girl who went to a party and things got out of hand. My advice: go home. Focus on her recovery. Don't start a war you can't win. I looked at him. I looked at the badge on his chest that was supposed to represent justice. It looked like a piece of tin. Get out of my sight, I said. Miller shrugged and walked away. He didn't care. To him, Lila was just another case file to be buried under red tape and bribes. I went back into the room and sat in the plastic chair next to Lila's bed. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound. I held her hand, careful of the 4 lines. I looked at her bruised face, and I imagined the fear she must have felt. I imagined Blake and Preston laughing. I imagined them high-fiving each other, thinking they were untouchable gods because of their daddy's money. They thought I was just a businessman. They thought I was just Mr. Julian in a 3-piece suit who would call a lawyer and settle out of court. They didn't know about the biometric safe in my basement. They didn't know about the ghillie suit folded in the back of my closet. They didn't know that long before I learned how to trade stocks, I learned how to calculate wind speed, distance, and the curvature of the earth to put a bullet through a coin from a mile away. I squeezed Lila's hand. Tears finally burned my eyes, hot and angry. I'm sorry I wasn't there, I whispered to her sleeping form. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. Suddenly, Lila gasped. Her eyes flew open, wide with terror. She tried to sit up, screaming a soundless, broken scream. Lila, it's me. It's Dad. I held her shoulders gently. She blinked, focusing on me. Her eyes were wild, darting around the room as if she expected them to still be there. She gripped my arm so hard her fingernails dug into my skin, drawing blood. Dad. She choked out, her voice raspy and broken. They took the baby. I know, I said, my voice shaking. I know, sweetheart. She pulled me closer, her eyes staring into something dark that only she could see. They laughed, Dad, she whispered, a tear cutting through the dried blood on her cheek. After they finished, Blake looked at me and said, Nobody will believe you. I felt something snap inside my chest. It was the final tether to my civilized life. The law had failed. The police had failed. God had looked away. So, I would have to look. Rest now, Lila, I said, kissing her forehead. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. They are wrong. I believe you. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Blake and Preston were probably sleeping in their silk sheets, thinking this was over. They had no idea that the hunter was awake. I didn't reach for a weapon immediately. That is the mistake of an amateur, a man ruled by hot blood. I am a strategist. In business, you don't burn the building down because of a bad deal. You call your lawyers, you leverage your assets, and you crush the opposition with paper and ink. I naively thought the same rules applied to the rape of my daughter and the murder of my grandchild. The morning after Lila woke up, I left her sleeping under the watch of private security guards, ex-Mossad agents I trusted with my life. I drove straight to the glass tower downtown that housed the law firm of Sterling and Associates. Marcus Sterling has been my attorney for 20 years. He's a shark in a $3,000 suit, a man who has made lawsuits against my companies disappear with a phone call. I walked into his office, expecting him to be ready for war. Instead, I found him looking out the window, his back to me. He didn't offer me a drink. We file today, Marcus, I said, throwing a file onto his desk. It contained everything I had gathered overnight, timelines, the names Blake and Preston, the location of the party. I want them in handcuffs by dinner. Marcus turned around. He looked pale. He looked like a man who had just been told he had a terminal illness. Julian, he said softly. Sit down. I didn't sit. I don't want to sit. I want the son of Senator Thorne and the son of Kincaid Tech to rot in a cell. I can't take the case, Marcus said. The silence in the room was heavy. I stared at him, trying to process the words. Excuse me? I pay this firm $5 million a year on retainer. And Senator Thorne sits on the committee that regulates the Bar Association. Kincaid Tech funds the re-election campaigns of half the judges in this state. Marcus replied, his voice shaking slightly. I got a call at 6 a.m., Julian. A courtesy call. They told me that if I represent you in this matter, they will audit every client I have. They will bury this firm. They will disbar me. I looked at this man, a man I thought was a titan, and realized he was just a servant to a bigger master. They raped her, Marcus, I said, my voice low. They killed the baby. I know, he whispered, looking down. And I am sick over it. But Julian, you can't win this in court. The police report already lists the incident as inconclusive. The rape kit results will be delayed. Lost. It's already happening. If you go after them legally, they will drag Lila's name through the mud. They will say she was drunk. She was promiscuous. She asked for it. They will destroy her to save their sons. I walked out of his office without another word. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, the death of hope. The system I had believed in, the system I had paid taxes to, the system I had built my empire within, it was a lie. It was a fence designed to keep the sheep in, while the wolves jumped over it whenever they pleased. I drove to the police station one last time. I had to be sure. I had to see it with my own eyes. I asked for Detective Miller. He wasn't there. Instead, a captain came out. He was a thick-necked man with eyes that didn't blink enough. He invited me into his office and closed the blinds. Mr. Julian, he said, clasping his hands on his desk. We've reviewed the initial findings. It appears your daughter. Well, she has a history of anxiety, doesn't she? She's on medication? She takes mild anti-anxiety meds for exams, I said, my hands balling into fists in my pockets. What does that have to do with assault? It affects credibility, the captain said smoothly. And the toxicology report isn't back, but witnesses say she was drinking heavily. Lila doesn't drink. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. Look, the captain leaned forward. These are good boys from good families. A bright future. We don't want to ruin lives over a misunderstanding. Maybe you should focus on healing. The families of the young men expressed their deepest regrets about the medical complications. They mentioned they would be willing to make a significant donation to a charity of your choice. To put this behind everyone. A donation. They were offering me money. They were trying to buy the blood of my grandson. I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten him. The soldier in me took over. The part of me that knows you never let the enemy know you are about to strike. I understand, I said calmly. Thank you for your time, Captain. He looked relieved. He thought he had won. He thought I was broken. I walked out of the station and sat in my car. I pulled out my phone. I didn't want to look, but I had to know the enemy. I opened social media and searched for Blake Thorne. There it was. Posted 2 hours ago. A video. It was filmed on a boat. A massive yacht. Blake was holding a bottle of champagne, laughing, his arm around a girl who looked terrified but was forcing a smile. Preston was in the background, dancing. The caption read, Untouchable. Weekend vibes. They were celebrating. While my daughter lay in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling, wondering why she survived, they were celebrating. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. The screen cracked. I drove home. Not to the penthouse in the city, but to the main estate, a sprawling mansion on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. It was a cold, modern fortress of glass and steel. I walked in. The silence of the empty house was different now. It wasn't peaceful, it was expectant. I walked past the living room, past the library, and down the stairs to the basement wine cellar. I walked to the back rack, where the vintage Bordeaux was kept. I reached behind a dusty bottle of 1982 Petrus and pressed a hidden panel in the stone. A section of the wall hissed and slid open. I stepped into the room that didn't exist on the blueprints. The air inside was cool and smelled of gun oil and stale memories. The walls were lined with monitors, currently dark. On the center table sat a large, black biometric case. I placed my hand on the scanner. A green light swept across my palm. Access granted. The latches clicked open with a heavy, mechanical sound. I lifted the lid. There it was. My old partner. A Macmillan TAC, 50 sniper rifle. It was dismantled, the black metal gleaming under the harsh halogen lights. Next to it were boxes of custom-grade ammunition, hand-loaded rounds I had made myself years ago. Match grade. Perfect balance. I ran my fingers over the cold barrel. I hadn't touched this weapon in 15 years. I had buried this part of my life because I wanted to be a father, not a killer. I wanted Lila to grow up knowing soft hands, not hands that had ended lives from a mile away. But the world didn't want a father. The world had proven that today. The world was full of monsters like Blake and Preston, protected by monsters like the captain and the senator. And the only thing that stops a monster is a bigger, scarier monster. I began to assemble the rifle. The movements were muscle memory. Click, slide, lock. My hands didn't shake. The grief that had been drowning me all day evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline focus. I picked up a single bullet. It was heavy, brass and lead. It wasn't money. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was the only currency that mattered now. I turned on the monitors. The screens flickered to life, showing satellite feeds, city grids, and police frequencies. I typed in a name, Blake Thorne. The screen zoomed in on the yacht club marina. I wasn't going to kill them. Not yet. Death was too easy. Death was an escape. I wanted to take away the one thing they valued more than life itself. I wanted to take away their safety. I wanted to take away their arrogance. I wanted them to look at the dark and feel the eyes of God staring back at them. I racked the bolt of the rifle. The sound echoed in the small room like a judge's gavel slamming down. Court was in session. The transition from CEO to hunter isn't instant. It's a shedding of skin. I had to strip away the layers of civilization I had wrapped around myself for Lila's sake. I stopped shaving. I stopped wearing the Italian suits. I started wearing dark, tactical clothing that didn't rustle when I moved. I slept in shifts for hours a night, waking up instantly at the slightest sound. But before I could pull a trigger, I needed to become a ghost. My first weapon wasn't the rifle, it was information. I sat in my underground bunker, surrounded by the hum of servers. I used the back doors I knew existed in the city's infrastructure, exploits I had learned about from defense contractors my company worked with. I wasn't just hacking a computer, I was invading their lives. I started with their phones. Cloning a SIM card is child's play if you have the right hardware and enough money to buy the encryption keys from the black market. Within 6 hours, I had a mirror of Blake's and Preston's phones on my screens. Every text, every call, every notification they received, I saw it first. I put on my headphones and listened. Dude, relax. Blake's voice came through, tinny but clear. My dad said the old man came to the station and they sent him packing. He's got nothing. Just some rich boomer crying about his slut daughter. I closed my eyes. The rage was a physical thing, a hot iron in my gut, but I forced it down. Listen, gather intel. Do not react. I don't know, man. Preston's voice replied. He sounded nervous. He's not just some random guy. He's Julian. He owns half the skyline. People say he used to be different. Before the business. Blake laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. Different? What, like a tough guy? Please. He wears suits and drinks tea. He's soft. If he tries anything, Judge Felix will sign a warrant so fast his head will spin. We're golden, President, just enjoy the weekend. Judge Felix. I typed the name into my database. Felix Holloway, a man who had been sitting on the bench for 30 years. A pillar of the community. And apparently, the lock on the cage that protected these animals. I added his name to the list. The list was growing. I needed to see the ground. Intelligence from a screen is one thing. Feeling the wind and seeing the angles is another. At 2 a.m., I drove a nondescript sedan to the marina where the yacht was docked. I parked a mile away and moved on foot. I wasn't carrying the big rifle yet, just a high-powered spotting scope and a camera with a telephoto lens. I wore black, blending into the shadows of the shipping containers and boathouses. I found a vantage point on the roof of a dry dock warehouse. It offered a perfect line of sight to the deck of the Golden Girl, the yacht owned by Senator Thorne. They were there. The party was still going. Music thumped across the water, a dull, rhythmic bass. Through my scope, I could see them clearly. Blake was snorting something off a glass table. Preston was throwing empty bottles into the harbor. There were girls there, too young, laughing nervously. I watched them for 3 hours. I memorized their movements. Blake paced when he was on the phone. Preston had a tic. He constantly checked his watch. They were sloppy. They stood in open windows. They leaned over railings. If I had the rifle with me, I could have ended it right then. A single shot, wind from the east at 5 miles per hour, elevation 0. Easy. But killing them now would be a mercy. They wouldn't know why. They wouldn't feel the dread. I took photos. Hundreds of them. I zoomed in on their faces, freezing their arrogance in high definition. Then, I went to the second location, the St. Regis Hotel, the scene of the crime. I couldn't get into the penthouse. It was still technically a crime scene, though the police tape was sagging and ignored. But I rented the room directly below it. I used a laser microphone, aiming it at the glass of the balcony above. I picked up vibrations. Cleaning crews. They were scrubbing the room. I could hear the industrial vacuums. They were erasing the evidence. My daughter's blood was being bleached out of the carpet fibers right now. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark hotel room, listening to the sound of the vacuum, and I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a promise. I went back to the bunker. It was time to make first contact. I didn't want to text them. Texts can be ignored. I wanted something physical, something that felt like a cold hand on the back of their necks. I printed one of the photos I had taken at the marina. It was a close-up of Blake's face, laughing, but I edited it. I superimposed a red crosshair over his forehead. I put it in a thick, cream-colored envelope. No return address. I drove to Blake's apartment building, a fortress of glass in the trendy district. I hacked the intercom system to buzz myself in as a delivery driver. I walked up to the penthouse door. I didn't knock. I slid the envelope under the door. Then, I went to Preston's house. I did the same, but his photo was different. It was a picture of him checking his watch. I wrote a time on it in red marker, 11:42 p.m., the exact time he had assaulted my daughter according to the hospital intake. I drove back to my bunker and waited. At 8 a.m., the notification started. Blake's phone, WTF? Did you send this? Preston's phone, send what? I just got a picture under my door. It's me. It's Jesus, Blake, it has a crosshair on it. Blake, I got one too. It's probably just some internet troll. Ignore it. Preston, how did they get it under my door? My doorman didn't see anyone. Blake, someone was here. Someone was outside my door. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a wolf watching the sheep realize the fence is broken. I leaned into the microphone connected to the bugs in their apartments. I couldn't speak to them yet, but I could mess with their environment. I accessed the smart home system of Blake's penthouse. I turned the thermostat down to 50 degrees. Why is it so cold in here? I heard Blake complain through the speakers. Alexa, set temperature to 70. I overrode the command. Access denied. What the hell? Blake muttered. Then, I accessed his sound system. I didn't blast heavy metal or scary noises. That's for movies. I played something worse. I played a recording I had found on Lila's cloud storage. It was a video from a year ago, her singing a lullaby to her cousin's baby. Her voice was soft, sweet, and full of life. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. It started playing softly in Blake's apartment, coming from the speakers in the ceiling, the walls, the bathroom. Turn it off. I heard Blake scream. Who is doing that? Alexa, off. The music got louder. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. I watched the audio waveform spike as Blake started smashing things. He was throwing vases, lamps, trying to silence the voice of the girl he thought he had broken. It's a ghost, he yelled into his phone to Preston. She's haunting me. She's not dead, you idiot. Preston yelled back. Someone is hacking us. I cut the music instantly. Silence slammed back into the apartment. Then, I sent a text to both of them simultaneously from an untraceable number. I am not a ghost. I am the consequences. I leaned back in my chair. The first domino had fallen. They were looking over their shoulders now. Paranoia is a powerful drug. Once it's in your system, it poisons everything. They wouldn't sleep tonight. And neither would I. I picked up a file on my desk. It was the next step. The rich boys had expensive cars. Fast cars. Cars they loved more than people. It was time to take away their toys. Fear is a muscle. If you work it hard enough, it tears. My goal wasn't just to scare Blake and Preston. I wanted to exhaust them. I wanted them jumping at shadows, doubting their friends, and screaming at their own reflections. Only when they were broken would they make a mistake. And when they made a mistake, I would be there to catch it. By day 3, the cracks were showing. I sat in my bunker, the blue light of the monitors reflecting in my eyes. The audio feed from Blake's apartment was a symphony of panic. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. I knew this because every time he drifted off, I triggered the fire alarm for exactly 3 seconds. Just long enough to wake him up with a heart-pounding jolt, but short enough that he thought he imagined it. He's watching me, Dad. Blake was shouting into his phone. I swear to God, the lights are flickering in Morse code. The TV turned on by itself and showed a picture of a graveyard. Senator Thorne's voice was calm, dismissive. Blake, pull yourself together. You're high. I told you to lay off the pills. I've had security sweep the place twice. There's no one there. It's stress. Go to the spa. Get a massage. I don't want a massage. I want a bodyguard. Blake screamed. You have 2 armed men outside your door right now. The senator snapped. Stop acting like a child. You're embarrassing the family. Click. The senator hung up. Perfect. Isolation. The father was dismissing the son's fears. That meant Blake was alone with his demons. It was time to escalate. I waited until nightfall. I knew Preston was heading to a charity gala downtown. He was trying to act normal, trying to maintain the facade of the golden boy. He drove a custom matte black Lamborghini Aventador. He loved that car more than he loved any human being. He parked it in the VIP valet section, right out front, under the bright lights. I didn't need to be close. I was perched on top of a parking garage 600 yards away. I had the Macmillan TAC 50, but I wasn't using lethal rounds. I had loaded a magazine with solid brass solids, bullets designed to penetrate engine blocks. Through the scope, the car was a beautiful, shiny target. I adjusted for the wind coming off the harbor. I breathed in. I breathed out. Crack. The sound of the shot was swallowed by the city noise, but the impact was unmistakable. The bullet punched through the hood of the Lamborghini like it was made of paper. It smashed into the engine block, shattering the pistons. Oil and coolant exploded underneath the car, pooling rapidly on the pristine pavement. I didn't stop. Crack. The front left tire disintegrated. Crack. The rear right tire exploded. I packed up and vanished before the valet even realized what had happened. 10 minutes later, I was back in the bunker, watching the security footage from the gala entrance. Preston walked out, a model on his arm, smiling for the paparazzi. He handed his ticket to the valet. The valet looked terrified. He pointed to the car. Preston's face went white. He ran to the wreckage of his $1 million machine. He fell to his knees, touching the jagged hole in the hood. He looked around wildly, scanning the rooftops, his eyes wide with terror. He knew. This wasn't vandalism. This was precision. His phone buzzed. I sent the text at that exact moment. Next time, you'll be in the driver's seat. Preston threw up right there on the red carpet. The paparazzi cameras flashed like lightning, capturing his fear for the morning papers. But the psychological war wasn't just about destruction. It was about invasion. I focused on the third member of their little group, Kyle. Kyle wasn't at the party, but he was the driver. He was the one who had locked the door. He was the weak link. He was younger, softer. I found his email address. I sent him a single audio file. It wasn't a threat. It was the sound of a heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. Then, I cut it off with a sharp beep, the sound of a flatline monitor. 5 minutes later, Kyle was calling Blake. Did you get it? Kyle was sobbing. The heartbeat? He knows, Blake. He knows about the baby. Shut up, Kyle. Blake hissed. Don't say anything over the phone. I can't take this. I'm going to the cops. I'm going to tell them it was your idea. You say a word, and my dad will bury you, Blake threatened. You think Julian is scary? My dad can make you disappear legally. I leaned forward. Got you. It was your idea. Blake had just admitted culpability on a recorded line. It wasn't enough for a court. The recording was illegal, but it was enough for me. It confirmed the hierarchy. Blake was the head. Preston was the muscle. Kyle was the accomplice. But then, something happened that I hadn't planned for. Something that made the blood freeze in my veins. I was cycling through the cameras in Blake's apartment. He was pacing, holding a glass of whiskey. His doorbell rang. He checked the monitor. It was Evan, my daughter's fiancé. The man who had sat by her bed holding her hand and crying. The man I had hugged and comforted in the hospital hallway. Let me in, Blake, Evan said into the intercom. We need to talk. He's getting closer. Blake buzzed him in. I watched, stunned, as Evan walked into the penthouse. He didn't look like a grieving fiancé. He looked annoyed. He poured himself a drink without asking. You look like hell, Blake, Evan said, taking a sip. He blew up Preston's car, Evan. Blake shouted. He's hacking my house. You said he was just a businessman. You said he was soft. He is a businessman, Evan said calmly. But he's grieving. Grieving men do crazy things. But don't worry. I'm handling it. How? Blake demanded. How are you handling it? He's a ghost. Evan smiled. It was a cold, reptilian smile that I had never seen on him before. Because I'm inside the house, Blake. I'm sleeping in the guest room at his estate. I hear everything he says to his security. I know when he leaves. I know when he sleeps. My hand hovered over the keyboard. My breath caught in my throat. Evan wasn't just a traitor. He was a spy. He was living under my roof, eating my food, pretending to love my daughter, all while reporting back to the men who had destroyed her. Does he suspect anything? Blake asked. No, Evan laughed. He thinks I'm the perfect son-in-law. I even cried with him yesterday. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. I stared at the screen. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, that I felt physically sick. The man Lila loved. The father of the child she lost. He was one of them. He had sold her out. Why? Just make sure the money is in my account by Friday, Evan said, finishing his drink. I need to pay off those bookies in Vegas before they break my legs. If I go down, Blake, I'm taking you all with me. Remember that. I gave you the access code to that room. Without me, you're just sad little boys outside a locked door. There it was. The smoking gun. Evan had unlocked the door. I took off my headphones. The room was silent, but inside my head, there was a roaring storm. The target list had just changed order. Blake and Preston could wait. They were just monsters doing what monsters do. But Evan was Judas. I stood up. I walked over to the gun rack. I didn't reach for the sniper rifle this time. I reached for a pistol. A suppressed Sig Sauer P226. This wasn't going to be a long-range engagement. This was going to be personal. I checked the time. Evan would be heading back to my estate soon to play the role of the grieving fiancé. He would expect a warm welcome. He would expect me to be the broken, sad father. He was in for a surprise. I turned off the lights in the bunker and headed for the stairs. It was time to go home. The drive back to my estate was a blur of cold, calculated fury. I didn't speed. I didn't weave through traffic. I drove with the precision of a man transporting nitroglycerin. Every time I thought of Evan's face, that sympathetic, tear-streaked face he had worn for days, I wanted to crush the steering wheel. He had held Lila's hand. He had kissed her forehead while she slept, drugged and broken, knowing he was the reason she was there. The betrayal wasn't just a knife in the back. It was a twist of the blade. I arrived at the estate before him. I dismissed the security staff for the night. Go home, I told the head of my detail, a burly ex-SAS operator named Grigori. I need some time alone with family. Evan is coming over. We're going to mourn. Grigori nodded solemnly. Understood, boss. Call if you need anything. He had no idea how much I needed this morning session. I sat in the main library. It was a cavernous room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a large fireplace. I didn't light a fire. The room was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the rain-streaked windows. I poured 2 glasses of scotch. One for me, one for the traitor. I placed my suppressed pistol under the cushion of my leather armchair. Headlights swept across the wall. The sound of a car door closing. The front door opening. Julian. Evan's voice echoed in the hallway. Are you home? The guard said you sent them away. In the library, Evan, I called out. My voice was steady. It sounded like the voice of a tired old man. Evan walked in, shaking rain off his coat. He looked the part perfectly. Disheveled hair, red-rimmed eyes, shoulders slumped in defeat. If I hadn't seen him laughing in Blake's penthouse an hour ago, I would have hugged him. God, what a day. Evan sighed, collapsing onto the sofa opposite me. He had the scotch. Is that for me? Drink up, I said. You look like you need it. He took a large gulp. I just came from the hospital. Lila, she's still not speaking much. It breaks my heart, Julian. Seeing her like that. I just want to kill whoever did this. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated evil of this man. Me too. Evan, I said, sipping my drink. I've been thinking a lot about the night of the party. About how they got to her. Evan stiffened slightly. It was subtle, a micro-expression of fear, but I caught it. What do you mean? Well, I swirled the amber liquid in my glass. Lila was in the VIP room. The Platinum Suite. That door has a keypad lock. The code changes every hour. Only the person who rented the room, Lila, and the people she invited would know it. Evan set his glass down. Maybe they hacked it, or maybe she left the door propped open. You know how trusting she is. True, I nodded. She trusted you. Of course, Evan said, his smile tight. And I would have died to protect her if I hadn't been stuck in traffic. Traffic, I repeated. Right. But here's the thing, Evan. I pulled the logs from the hotel security system. The door wasn't hacked, and it wasn't propped open. Someone typed in the code at 11:40 p.m. And then, 10 seconds later, 3 men walked in. Evan stood up. Julian, you're obsessing. You need to sleep. This isn't healthy. Sit down, I said. My voice dropped an octave. It wasn't a request. I think I should go, Evan said, backing away. You're acting strange. I said sit down. I pulled the pistol from the cushion. I didn't point it at his head. I pointed it at his knee. Evan froze. His eyes went wide, staring at the suppressor. Julian? What are you doing? It's me. It's Evan. I know who you are, I said calmly. I know you owe $200,000 to a bookie in Vegas named Sal. I know you've been funneling money out of Lila's trust fund for months. And I know you sold the access code to Blake Thorne for 50 grand to clear your debt. Evan's face went white. All the color drained away, leaving him looking like a wax figure. That's insane. Who told you that? You did, I said. I heard you in Blake's apartment tonight. I gave you the access code. Without me, you're just sad little boys outside a locked door. Remember? Evan lunged. He was desperate, fueled by panic. He grabbed a heavy crystal ashtray from the table and swung it at my head. He was fast, but he was a civilian. I didn't even stand up. I shifted my weight, let the ashtray sail past my ear, and fired. Uffed. The sound was no louder than a staple gun. Evan screamed and collapsed, clutching his right thigh. The bullet had passed cleanly through the muscle. Painful, messy, but not lethal. He writhed on the Persian rug, blood soaking into the intricate patterns. You shot me, he shrieked. You crazy old bastard, you shot me. I stood up and walked over to him. I kicked the ashtray away. I looked down at him with zero empathy. He wasn't family anymore. He was a target. That was a warning, I said. The next one goes in your kneecap. That means you'll never walk without a cane again. The one after that goes in your stomach. That means a colostomy bag for life. Do you want to keep going, or do you want to talk? I'll sue you, Evan spat, tears streaming down his face. I'll tell the police. Tell them what? I asked. That you broke into my house and attacked me? That I defended myself? Look at the ashtray, Evan. Your prints are on it. It's near my head. It's self-defense. I leaned down, pressing the hot muzzle of the suppressor against his forehead. The heat seared his skin. He stopped screaming instantly. Unlock your phone, I commanded. He fumbled with trembling hands, unlocking it. I took the device. I opened his banking app. There it was. A transfer of $50,000 from a shell company linked to Kincaid Tech. Transfer it back, I said. What? Transfer the blood money to a children's charity. Now. He did it, sobbing the entire time. Now, I said, stepping back. We're going to record a confession. You're going to look into this camera, and you're going to tell the world exactly what you did. You're going to name Blake, Preston, Kyle, and Judge Felix. They'll kill me, Evan whispered. If I talk, the senator will have me killed in prison. Evan, I said, crouching down so our eyes met. You're worried about them killing you? You should be worried about me keeping you alive. I gestured to his leg. I know exactly where to shoot to cause maximum pain without killing you. I can keep you alive for days in this library. Do you want to test me? He broke. He wept. He told me everything. He spilled the details of the blackmail ring the senator ran. He told me about the judge's offshore accounts. He told me about the hidden cameras the boys used to record their assaults for trophies. I recorded it all. Every sickening word. When he was done, I didn't kill him. He wasn't worth the bullet. And I needed a messenger. I bandaged his leg with a field dressing from my kit. I dragged him to the front door and threw him out into the rain. Run, I said. Go to your friends. Tell them I know everything. Tell them the ghost is coming. Evan limped away into the dark, terrified and broken. I went back inside and cleaned the blood off the rug. I felt lighter. The betrayal was exposed. The rot was cut out. Now, there were no more secrets. Only targets. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You made a mistake, Julian. You should have killed him. Now we know you're coming. It was Blake. Evan had called him immediately. I typed back a single sentence. I'm not coming. I'm already here. I looked out the window. Down at the gate of my estate, headlights appeared. 3 black SUVs. The senator's private security. Or maybe mercenaries. They weren't waiting for the police. They were coming to silence me tonight. I smiled. I turned off the lights in the house. I picked up the Macmillan TAC 50. Welcome to the jungle, boys, I whispered. The text I sent to Blake. I'm not coming. I'm already here. Wasn't just bravado. It was a tactical assessment. My estate sits on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. The only way in is the main gate, a winding driveway surrounded by dense forest. I had bought this land precisely because it was defensible. I watched the 3 black SUVs crash through the front gate on my security monitors. They didn't even stop to hack the keypad. They just rammed it. This wasn't a tactical team. This was a hit squad. They were sloppy, aggressive, and clearly ordered to leave no witnesses. Grigori, I spoke into my radio headset. Status. We're clear, boss. Grigori's voice crackled. Per your orders, my team has pulled back to the perimeter. We're watching, but not engaging unless you give the signal. Are you sure about this? These guys look heavy. I'm sure, I said. Let them come to the house. I want them to think I'm trapped. I wasn't in the house. I was already 300 yards away, prone on a ridge line in the tree-line, wearing my ghillie suit. The rain was pouring down now, masking my heat signature and muffling sound. To anyone looking through thermal optics, the main house was glowing with warmth. I had cranked the heating system to max. To them, it looked like a cozy target. The SUVs screeched to a halt in front of the main entrance. 12 men poured out. They wore tactical gear, but no unit patches. Mercenaries. Probably ex-military contractors paid off the books by Senator Thorne. They moved in a stack, breaching the front door with explosives. Boom. The front of my house disintegrated. They rushed in, shouting, flashlight beams cutting through the smoke. I adjusted my scope. I wasn't aiming at the men. I was aiming at the engine blocks of their vehicles. Thump. The recoil of the .50 caliber punched my shoulder. The first SUV's engine exploded, steam hissing violently. Thump. Thump. The second and third vehicles died instantly. Now they were stranded. Inside the house, chaos erupted. I could hear them screaming over the comms I had tapped into. Contact front. Vehicles are down. Where's the shooter? I don't know. The house is empty. He's not here. Pull back. Pull back. We can't. The cars are dead. I keyed my microphone, broadcasting over their frequency. Gentlemen, I said, my voice calm amidst the static. You are trespassing. Who is this? The team leader shouted. Julian? Where are you? I'm the guy holding the hammer. I replied. You have 30 seconds to drop your weapons and lie face down on the asphalt. If you do, the police will come and arrest you. If you don't, well, I have plenty of ammo. Screw you, the leader yelled. Fan out. Find him in the trees. Bad decision. They started running toward the tree line. They were trying to flank me, but they were fighting in my backyard. I had spent years landscaping this property. I knew every dip, every rock, every line of sight. I switched targets. I wasn't killing them. I needed them alive to testify against the senator. I aimed for the ground in front of their feet. Thump. Dirt and rock exploded inches from the leader's boot. He froze. Thump. Another round shattered a tree branch right next to his head. The next one doesn't miss, I said over the radio. They stopped. They looked at the dark forest, terrified. They realized they were fighting a ghost. One by one, they dropped their rifles. They lay down on the wet driveway, hands on their heads. Grigori, I said, wrap them up. My security team emerged from the shadows like wraiths, zip-tying the mercenaries before they even knew what was happening. I didn't go down to meet them. I had bigger fish to fry. I had the confession from Evan. I had the mercenaries captured, but I still needed the head of the snake. I packed up my rifle and hiked back to my hidden garage where I kept a nondescript plumbing van. I drove out the back service road, leaving the carnage for the police to find. I needed to find Judge Felix. Evan had told me that the judge kept his insurance files, the blackmail material on the senator and the other fathers, in a safe deposit box at a private bank downtown. But he also kept digital copies on a secure server in his home office. The judge lived in a gated community called Silverleaf. High walls, armed guards. But to a man who just dismantled a mercenary team, it was a playground. I parked the van a mile away and moved on foot. I bypassed the gate sensors. I slipped past the patrolling guard dogs. I reached the judge's mansion at 3 a.m. The house was dark, except for one light in the study. I climbed the trellis on the side of the house. The ivy was thick and strong. I reached the balcony of the study. The window was unlocked. Arrogance again. These men truly believed they were untouchable. I slipped inside. Judge Felix was sitting at his desk, nursing a brandy. He was on the phone. I don't care that the team went dark, Senator, Felix was saying, his voice slurred. It's done. Julian is probably dead by now. We can spin the story. Home invasion gone wrong. A tragedy. I stepped out of the shadows. I was still wearing the wet ghillie suit, bits of leaf and mud clinging to me. I must have looked like a swamp monster. You might want to check your sources, Felix, I said. The judge dropped his phone. He spun around, his eyes bulging. He reached for a drawer, presumably for a gun. I crossed the room in 2 strides and slammed the drawer shut on his hand. He screamed, a high-pitched, pathetic sound. Sit, I commanded, shoving him back into his leather chair. You can't be here, Felix stammered, clutching his crushed fingers. You're supposed to be dead. I'm very hard to kill, I said. Unlike your career. I pulled out a USB drive, the one with Evan's confession. I plugged it into his computer. What are you doing? Felix wheezed. I'm uploading a little insurance policy of my own, I said. But first, I want to see yours. Evan told me you keep files on your friends. The senator. The Kincaid family. Show me. I don't know what you're talking about. Felix lied. I pulled my pistol. I placed it on the desk. Felix, I just took out 12 armed men without a scratch. Do you really think I won't hurt you? He stared at the gun. He crumbled. It's in the hidden drive, he whispered. Behind the painting. I walked over to a painting of a ship in a storm. I moved it aside. A small wall safe. Code, I said. 1-9-8-4, he muttered. I opened it. Inside was a hard drive labeled leverage. I took it. This was it. The nuclear option. This drive contained proof of decades of corruption, bribes, covered-up DUIs, assaults, tax evasion. It was enough to bring down half the city government. You're finished, Julian. Felix spat, trying to regain some dignity. You can't use that. If you release that, the city burns. The economy crashes. You'll be a terrorist. I don't care about the city, I said cold. I care about my daughter. I pocketed the drive. But before I go, I said, turning back to him, I need you to do one thing. I need you to sign a warrant. A warrant? Felix looked confused. For who? For Blake Thorne, Preston Kincaid, and Kyle Vane. I said, I want arrest warrants signed by you. Tonight. I can't. Felix protested. The senator will kill me. If you don't sign them, I leaned in close. I will upload this drive to every news outlet in the world in 5 minutes. You will go to prison for the rest of your life. Or, you sign the warrants. You become the hero judge who finally turned on the corruption, and maybe, just maybe, the DOJ cuts you a deal. It was a lie, of course. He was going down regardless. But rats will always grab at a lifeline. Felix's hand shook as he picked up his pen with his uninjured hand. He drafted the warrants. He signed them. Good, I said, taking the papers. Now stay here. Don't call anyone. If you pick up that phone, the drive goes live. I vanished back into the night. I had the evidence. I had the warrants. But I wasn't going to the police yet. The police were too slow. I wanted the boys to know it was over. I wanted them to run. Because when they ran, they would gather in one place. And when they gathered, I could end this properly. I drove to a safe location and uploaded a snippet of the drive to a burner Twitter account. Just a teaser. A photo of the senator taking a bribe. The caption, "The flood is coming." I watched the news break. Panic swept the city. Then, I got a ping on my tracker. Blake's phone was moving. Fast. He was heading to the private airfield. He wasn't alone. Preston and Kyle were with him. They were fleeing. I checked the location. The airfield was isolated. Flat. Perfect for long-range work. I looked at my rifle in the passenger seat. One last job, I whispered. The private airfield was a desolate stretch of tarmac 10 miles outside the city limits, carved out of the wetlands. It was used by billionaires who didn't want their flight logs tracked. It was the perfect escape route for rats leaving a sinking ship. I arrived 20 minutes before they did. I didn't drive up to the gate. I parked my van deep in the marshland, covering it with a camouflage net. I grabbed my rifle, my spotting scope, and a ghillie hood. I moved through the tall, wet grass like a snake, low and slow. The smell of mud and salt filled my nose, a familiar scent that reminded me of missions long ago. I found my perch on a small rise, an old drainage berm about 1,200 yards from the main hangar. It was a long shot, but the wind was steady. I set up my bipod, digging the legs into the soft earth. I checked my dope card, the cheat sheet taped to my stock that told me the adjustments for this exact distance. Elevation, 34 MOA up. Windage, 2 MOA left. I dialed the turrets. Click, click, click. The sound was satisfyingly mechanical. Through the scope, the airfield was quiet. A sleek Gulfstream jet was idling on the runway, its engines whining, heat haze shimmering behind the turbines. A pilot was doing a frantic pre-flight check. They were in a hurry. Headlights cut through the darkness. A convoy of luxury SUVs raced onto the tarmac, ignoring all safety protocols. They screeched to a halt right next to the jet. The doors flew open. Blake, Preston, and Kyle spilled out. They were carrying duffel bags, probably stuffed with cash. They looked terrified, constantly looking over their shoulders. Behind them, Senator Thorne and Mr. Kincaid, Preston's father, stepped out. The fathers were there to ensure the escape. They were arguing with the pilot, pointing at the sky, demanding he take off immediately. I watched them through the crosshairs. They looked so small from this distance. Just figures in a play. I keep my radio. I wasn't just watching. I had tapped into the airfield's control tower frequency. Attention, Gulfstream November 01, I said. My voice was calm, distorted slightly by the encryption. The pilot jumped. I saw him look around wildly. Who is this? Tower. We are cleared for immediate departure. This is not the tower, I said. This is air traffic control for your conscience. Kill the engines. What? The pilot shouted. Senator, someone is on the radio. Senator Thorne grabbed the headset from the pilot. Listen to me, whoever you are. We have federal clearance. If you interfere with this flight, you will be prosecuted for terrorism. Senator, I said, you have 30 seconds to step away from the plane. If that jet moves 1 inch, it will never fly again. Ignore him. Thorne yelled at the pilot. Take off. Now. The engines roared. The jet began to taxi. Bad choice, I whispered. I settled the crosshair on the front landing gear of the jet. A tire shot at this speed would be catastrophic, but survivable. I didn't want them dead. I wanted them grounded. I exhaled. The world narrowed down to a single point. Boom. The rifle kicked hard against my shoulder. A second and a half later, the front tire of the Gulfstream vaporized. The jet lurched violently forward, the nose slamming into the tarmac. Sparks flew in a massive shower as the metal scraped against the concrete. The plane skidded sideways, screaming like a dying beast, before coming to a grinding halt halfway down the runway. The SUVs swerved to avoid hitting it. I racked the bolt. Clack, clack. A fresh round slid into the chamber. The door of the jet opened. The boys stumbled out, coughing in the smoke, terrified. They ran back toward the SUVs. No running, I murmured. I aimed at the engine block of the lead SUV, Senator Thorne's armored Cadillac. Boom. The hood buckled. Steam exploded upwards. The engine died. I shifted to the second SUV. Boom. That one died too. Now they were trapped. No plane. No cars. Just a cold, dark airfield and a sniper they couldn't see. They scrambled behind the wreckage of the cars, using them for cover. I could see Senator Thorne on his phone, screaming. He was probably calling his hit squad. Too bad they were all zip-tied in my driveway. Or maybe he was calling the police. Even better. I keyed the radio again. I broadcasted to the open frequency, so they could hear it on the car speakers. There is nowhere to go, Senator, I said. The police are coming, but not the ones you own. I sent the evidence to the FBI 20 minutes ago. Agents from the regional office are en route. You have about 10 minutes of freedom left. I'll pay you. Thorne screamed at the sky, his voice cracking. Name your price. 10 million. 20. Just let my son go. My grandson's life was priceless, I replied. You can't buy your way out of this. He didn't mean to hurt her. Thorne yelled, desperate now. It was an accident. She was willing. I have the video, Senator, I lied. I have the confession from Evan. I have everything. It's over. Silence fell over the tarmac. The boys were crying. Actual tears. Blake, the tough guy, was huddled in a ball against a tire, sobbing into his hands. Preston was vomiting. Kyle was praying. But then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A third car appeared at the far end of the runway. Not an SUV. A police cruiser. It was Judge Felix. He hadn't stayed at his house. He hadn't waited to be arrested. He had come here. And he wasn't alone. He dragged someone out of the back seat. It was Lila. My heart stopped. She was in a hospital gown, barely able to stand. He had a gun to her head. Julian. Felix's voice boomed over a megaphone. I know you're out there. I know you're watching. Come out, or she dies. How? How did he get her? My security, the guards at the hospital. Then I remembered. I had pulled my best men to defend my estate. I had left the hospital with standard security. Felix must have used his badge, his authority, to walk right in and take her. Drop the weapon, Julian. Felix screamed. Stand up. Show yourself. Lila looked so weak. She wasn't crying. She looked resigned. She looked brave. I was 1,200 yards away. A headshot on a moving target holding a hostage is impossible. Even for me. The risk was too high. If I missed by an inch, I would kill my own daughter. I stood up from the grass. I dropped my ghillie hood. I raised my hands. I'm here. I shouted, my voice carrying over the wind. Walk forward. Felix commanded. Slowly, I started walking. It would take me 10 minutes to reach them. 10 minutes for him to panic. 10 minutes for the FBI to arrive. Dad, don't. Lila screamed. Her voice was thin but fierce. Shoot him. Don't let him win. Shut up. Felix struck her with the pistol. The rage that flared in me was white hot. But I kept walking. I had to close the distance. I had to get a clean shot. But Felix wasn't waiting. He was panicking. He dragged Lila toward the wreckage of the plane. He was trying to use the jet as a shield. Get in the plane, he shouted to the boys. We're taking off. The landing gear is damaged, but the engines still work. We can limp it into the air. He was insane. Taking off with a collapsed nose gear would result in a fireball. He would kill everyone, including Lila. I couldn't let them get back on that plane. I stopped walking. I dropped to one knee. I didn't care about exposure. I didn't care if they saw me. I raised the rifle. Distance, 800 yards now. Target, Judge Felix. Obstruction, my daughter. He was holding her tight against his chest. His head was partially behind hers. The only target I had was his shoulder or his leg. But a leg shot wouldn't stop him from pulling the trigger on Lila. I needed a miracle. I centered the crosshair. Not on Felix. Not on Lila. I aimed at the ground, 10 feet in front of them. Specifically, at a puddle of jet fuel that had leaked from the damaged wing. Forgive me, Lila, I whispered. I pulled the trigger. Boom. The bullet struck the concrete beneath the fuel. The spark ignited the vapor instantly. Whoosh. A wall of fire erupted between Felix and the plane. It wasn't an explosion that would kill them, but a flash fire that created a barrier of heat and terror. Felix flinched. He threw his arm up to shield his face from the heat. In that split second, he let go of Lila. She stumbled back, falling away from him. Now, I said. I cycled the bolt. I aimed for Felix's right hand, the one holding the gun. Boom. The judge's hand disintegrated in a spray of red mist. The gun went flying. He screamed, clutching his stump, falling to his knees. Lila scrambled away, crawling on the tarmac. The boys and the senator were frozen in shock. Then, the sirens started. Not police sirens. The deep, warbling sirens of federal vehicles. Blue and red lights flooded the airfield from the main gate. The FBI had arrived. Armored trucks smashed through the fence. Agents swarmed the tarmac, weapons drawn. Federal agents dropped to the ground. Now, I watched through my scope as they tackled the senator. They tackled the boys. Medics rushed to Lila. It was over. Or so I thought. I lowered my rifle. I sat back in the wet grass, the adrenaline crashing out of my system. I watched them load my daughter into an ambulance. She was safe. The bad men were in cuffs. But as I watched the FBI lead Judge Felix away, I saw him smiling. He was bleeding. He was handcuffed, but he was smiling. He looked at the camera of a news crew that had just arrived. He mouthed something. I have leverage. He still thought he could win. He still thought the drive I took wasn't enough. He was wrong. I packed up my rifle. I wasn't going down there to give a statement. I was a vigilante now. A criminal in the eyes of the law. I couldn't be Julian the CEO anymore. I faded back into the swamp. I had one more loose end to tie up. The story wasn't finished until the ink was dry. And I was going to write the ending in blood if I had to. The FBI raid on the airfield was headline news across the globe within an hour. Billionaire's daughter rescued. The cheering flashed on every screen from Times Square to Tokyo. Senator arrested in trafficking scandal. I watched it all from a motel room in a town 3 hours away. I had ditched the van, burned my clothes, and bought a used pickup truck with cash. I was officially a ghost. The authorities wanted to question the sniper, but they were more focused on the massive corruption ring I had exposed. Lila was safe. That was the only thing that mattered. I watched a clip of her being wheeled into a secure hospital wing, surrounded by federal agents. She looked broken, but alive. But Judge Felix's smile haunted me. I have leverage. Why would a man who just lost his hand and his freedom smile? Unless he had an ace up his sleeve that I hadn't found. I plugged the judge's hard drive into my encrypted laptop. I had to know. I scanned the files again. I found a folder I had missed. It was hidden inside a system file, labeled Project Lazarus. I opened it. My blood ran cold. It wasn't blackmail on the senator. It wasn't financial data. It was a hit list. A dead man's switch protocol. The document outlined an automated contract. If Judge Felix was arrested or killed, a signal would be sent to a dark web server. That signal would activate a dormant team of highly specialized assassins, cleaners, whose sole job was to eliminate witnesses. The primary target wasn't me. It wasn't the senator. It was Lila. The logic was brutal. Without the victim, there is no case. If Lila died before she could testify in front of a grand jury, the charges of rape and kidnapping would fall apart. The defense would claim it was all a misunderstanding, a gone wrong party, and without her voice, the rich boys would walk free on technicalities. I checked the timestamp. The signal had been sent the moment Felix was handcuffed. The cleaners were already active. I slammed the laptop shut. I grabbed my gear. I had to get back to the city. I had to get to the hospital. The FBI agents guarding her were good, but they were law enforcement. They followed rules. They wouldn't be expecting a team of professional killers who operated like ghosts. I drove through the night, pushing the old truck to its limit. I called Marcus, my lawyer, on a burner phone. Julian? My God, are you okay? Marcus answered on the first ring. The police are tearing the city apart looking for you. Listen to me, I said. Felix activated a kill team. They're going for Lila. You need to call the FBI agent in charge. Tell him to lock down the hospital wing. No one in or out. Not even doctors. Julian, you sound paranoid, Marcus said. She has 20 federal agents around her. Just make the call, Marcus. I shouted. Do it now. I hung up. I couldn't rely on them. I arrived at the hospital at 4 a.m. It was a fortress. Police cruisers at every entrance. Media vans camped on the sidewalk. I couldn't walk in through the front door. I went to the roof of the parking garage across the street. I set up my spotting scope. I scanned the hospital windows. Lila was on the 4th floor, east wing. I could see the silhouette of an agent standing guard inside her room. Then I saw it. On the roof of the hospital, a shadow moved. It wasn't a guard. It moved too fluidly. I zoomed in. A figure in black, rappelling down the side of the building. Then another. And a third. They were bypassing the lobby security entirely. They were coming through the window. I didn't have time to run across the street. I didn't have time to call anyone. I unpacked the Macmillan. I was 600 yards away. The angle was steep. The wind was swirling between the buildings. Not today, I whispered. I settled the crosshair on the first climber. He was suspended by a rope just above Lila's window. He was cutting the glass with a laser tool. I took a breath. Boom. The bullet struck the wall inches from his head. I missed. The wind had pushed around. But it did the job. The glass shattered from the impact. The climber swung away, startled. Inside the room, the FBI agent reacted instantly. I saw him draw his weapon and pull Lila off the bed, shielding her. The element of surprise was gone. The assassins didn't retreat. They breached the window, swinging in amidst the broken glass. Boom. I fired again. This time I adjusted. The second climber, still on the rope, took a round to the shoulder. He spun wildly, losing his grip, dangling by his harness. Inside the room, a firefight erupted. Muzzle flashes lit up the dark window like a strobe light. "Hold on, Lila," I gritted out. I couldn't shoot into the room. The risk of hitting her was too high. I had to stop the reinforcements. The third climber was on the ledge, about to enter. Boom. I hit the anchor point of his rope on the roof. The rope snapped. He fell. It wasn't a lethal fall. He landed on a balcony below, but he was out of the fight. Sirens wailed. The hospital went into full lockdown. SWAT teams were sprinting up the stairs. I watched through the scope as the FBI agent inside the room managed to push the first assassin back out the window. The assassin fell to the ground, subdued. The room was secure. I collapsed back against the cold concrete of the parking garage wall. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. They had tried to kill her. Even from behind bars, the system was trying to kill her. I realized then that this would never end. As long as the rich boys had money, as long as the senator had influence, as long as Judge Felix had secrets, Lila would be a target. A trial would take years. Appeals would take decades. She would live her entire life looking over her shoulder. Unless there was no one left to pay the assassins. I packed up the rifle. I was done playing defense. I was done with justice. Justice was a concept for civilized people. I was in the jungle now. I needed to cut the head off the Hydra. Not the boys. They were just pawns. Not the judge. He was just a tool. I needed to go after the money. I knew where the senator kept his war chest. The physical cash and bearer bonds he used for black operations. It wasn't in a bank. It was in a private vault in the basement of the Kincaid Tech headquarters. If I destroyed their money, I destroyed their power. I started the truck. The sun was beginning to rise over the city, casting long, bloody shadows across the skyline. Part 9, I said to myself. We burn it down. I wasn't going to Kincaid Tech to steal the money. I was going to burn it. If I took it, I was a thief. If I burned it, I was a message. But I needed to draw them out. I needed the fathers, Senator Thorne and Mr. Kincaid, to see their legacy turn to ash. I drove the battered truck to an industrial district on the edge of the city. I found an old, abandoned warehouse that used to belong to one of my shell companies. It was a massive, rusting skeleton of steel, perfect for a final stand. I sent a text to the senator's personal number. I knew he had his phone, even in custody. He was a senator. Rules didn't apply to him yet. I have the drive. I have the location of the vault. Meet me at the old ironworks warehouse in 1 hour. Come alone, or I release the encryption key to the world. It was a bluff. I didn't need them to come alone. I knew they wouldn't. I knew they would send whatever dirty cops or hired guns they had left. I spent the hour preparing. I wasn't setting up a sniper nest this time. I was setting up a kill box. I rigged the warehouse with flashbangs I had in my tactical bag. I set up tripwires using fishing line and flares. I placed my phone in the center of the room, connected to a massive speaker system. At 6 a.m., they arrived. Not the senator. He was too cowardly. But his fixer arrived, a man named Silas, accompanied by 5 heavily armed men. They weren't police. They were the cleanup crew. They moved into the warehouse, scanning the shadows with laser sights. "Julian," Silas shouted, his voice echoing in the empty space. "We're here. Show yourself." I was high above them, perched on a rusted catwalk 40 feet in the air. I pressed a button on my remote. Click. The massive steel doors of the warehouse slammed shut, locking automatically. "What the hell?" one of the men shouted, spinning around. Then, I hit play on the speaker system. The sound of a heavy machine gun, recorded fire, blasted through the speakers at 120 decibels. It was deafening. The men panicked. They dove for cover, firing blindly into the dark corners of the warehouse. They thought they were being ambushed by a platoon. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" Silas screamed. "It's a recording." While they were disoriented, I dropped a flashbang from the catwalk. Bang! A blinding white light filled the room. The men screamed, clutching their eyes. I moved. I didn't shoot. I rappelled down from the catwalk, landing silently behind the last man in the stack. I struck him with the butt of my rifle. He crumbled. I moved to the next. A swift kick to the knee, followed by a choke hold. He was unconscious in 6 seconds. I was a ghost moving through the smoke. One by one, I took them down. No bullets. Just brutal, efficient violence. Finally, only Silas was left. He was standing in the center of the room, spinning in circles, aiming his pistol at shadows. "Where are you?" he shrieked. "Right here," I whispered. I stepped out of the smoke directly in front of him. Before he could pull the trigger, I grabbed his wrist and twisted. The gun clattered to the floor. I swept his legs, and he hit the concrete hard. I put my boot on his chest. "The vault," I said. "Verify the location." "You're dead, Julian." Silas spat, blood on his teeth. "The senator will nuke this whole city to get you." "Let him try," I said. I pulled out a lighter. I looked around the warehouse. I had rigged the support pillars with small incendiary charges. "This is just the beginning," I told him. I lit the fuse. "Run," I said. Silas scrambled up and ran for the side exit I had left unlocked. As he burst out into the morning light, the charges detonated. The warehouse didn't explode. It collapsed inward, a controlled demolition of dust and steel. I walked out the back, watching the dust cloud rise. I had neutralized their hit squad. I had terrified their fixer. Now, there was nothing standing between me and the fathers. The endgame wasn't about money anymore. It was about ending the bloodline of corruption. The senator and Mr. Kincaid were being held at the federal detention center downtown, but I knew how the world worked. Their lawyers were already filing motions. The judge hearing the bail hearing was an old golf buddy of Kincaid. Within 24 hours, they would be out on house arrest, sipping scotch in their mansions while my daughter lived in a safe house. That was unacceptable. I didn't go to the jail. I went to the courthouse. The arraignment was scheduled for 9 a.m. It was a media circus. Every news van in the state was parked outside the marble steps. Protesters were chanting Lila's name. I knew the route they would take. They would be brought in through the underground garage, but there was a brief moment, a 6-second window, where they would be walked from the armored van to the secure elevator. It was an open-air transition point, designed for secure transfers, but visible from one specific angle, the bell tower of the old cathedral 3 blocks away. I was in that bell tower at 7 a.m. The space was cramped, smelling of pigeon dust and old incense. I set up the Macmillan tack, 50 on a pile of sandbags I had hauled up in a duffel bag. Distance, 1,400 yards. Wind, 8 miles per hour, full value from the left. Target size, a walking man. This was the shot I had trained for my entire military career. The impossible shot. I waited. My heart rate was 45 beats per minute. Ice water in my veins. At 8:58 a.m., the armored van arrived. The back doors opened. Senator Thorne stepped out first. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, but he walked with his head high, arrogant. He was smiling at something his lawyer said. He didn't look like a prisoner. He looked like a king temporarily inconvenienced. Mr. Kincaid stepped out next. Then, Blake, Preston, and Kyle. They looked broken, shuffling in their chains. I wasn't aiming for the boys. They were already dead inside. Prison would eat them alive. I shifted the crosshair to Senator Thorne. For Lila, I whispered. I didn't aim for his head. That would be too quick. I aimed for the briefcase his lawyer was holding. The briefcase that contained the plea deal documents. The papers that would likely set them free on a technicality. I exhaled. Boom. The rifle roared. The bullet screamed across the city skyline, punching through the morning air. It took 1.8 seconds to reach the target. In the scope, I saw the lawyer's briefcase explode. Papers, thousands of white sheets, erupted into the air like confetti. The senator flinched, covered in shredded legal briefs. Panic erupted. Marshals tackled the prisoners. But I wasn't done. I racked the bolt. I aimed at the engine block of the transport van, just as the driver tried to peel away. Boom. The van died instantly, smoke pouring from the grill. Now, total chaos. The media cameras turned, zooming in on the sniper attack. I keyed a burner phone connected to a speaker I had planted in a trash can near the media pit. People of the city, my voice boomed, distorted and deep. Look at them. Look at the men who sell your children. The evidence is online. The system is broken. Today we fix it. I looked through the scope one last time. Senator Thorne was on his knees, not in prayer, but in terror. He was looking up at the cathedral, realizing that his money couldn't stop a .50 caliber bullet. I didn't shoot him. I didn't need to. I had stripped him of his dignity. I had shown the world he was vulnerable. I dismantled the rifle in 30 seconds. I wiped the room. I left the bell tower before the sirens even got close. As I walked down the street, blending into the crowd of morning commuters, I saw the news alert on a massive billboard. Sniper attack at courthouse. No casualties. Thousands of documents exposed. I smiled. The documents I had scattered weren't just legal papers. I had packed the lawyer's briefcase with printed copies of the judge's hit list the night before, during a stealth visit to his office. The wind was blowing the truth all over the city. Every reporter, every citizen, was picking up a piece of paper that proved the conspiracy. It was checkmate. The city didn't burn. It woke up. The papers I scattered outside the courthouse, the confetti of truth, were impossible to ignore. Within hours, the Justice Department had taken over the entire case. The local police, the corrupt judges, the paid-off DAs, they were all swept away in a tidal wave of federal indictments. I sat in a small diner near the border, watching the news on a dusty TV mounted in the corner. Senator Thorne denied bail, the anchor announced, facing life in prison for conspiracy to commit murder and human trafficking. The screen changed to show Blake, Preston, and Kyle. They weren't smiling anymore. They looked like what they were, scared children who had played a game they didn't understand. They were being transferred to a maximum security federal penitentiary. No country clubs for them. They would spend the next 30 years in a 6x8 concrete box. And Lila. The screen showed a clip of her leaving the hospital. She was walking on her own. She stopped at the microphones. She looked directly into the camera. "I don't know where my father is," she said, her voice steady and strong. "But I know he's listening. Dad, if you can hear me, thank you. You saved me. You saved all of us." She touched her necklace, a small silver locket I had given her when she was 10. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. I felt a lump in my throat that no amount of whiskey could wash away. I wanted to call her. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to see the grandchild she would have one day in the future. But I couldn't. Julian, the CEO, was dead. He died the moment he opened that gun case. I was a fugitive now, a vigilante, a ghost. If I returned, I would go to prison, and the story would become about me, not her. I paid for my coffee with cash. I walked out to my old truck. I drove south. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe Mexico. Maybe Argentina. Somewhere quiet where I could disappear. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. In my pocket, I had a picture of Lila. And in my heart, I had peace. I had proven that even when the law fails, justice is still possible. It just requires a steady hand and the will to pull the trigger. I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The city skyline was fading into the distance. I wasn't leaving a legacy of buildings or money. I was leaving a legacy of protection. As long as there are wolves in this world, there will always be a need for the hunter in the dark. And I am always watching. Wait, before you go, I have a question that might haunt you tonight. If the law failed your daughter, if the people sworn to protect her were the ones hurting her, how far would you go? Would you trust the system that betrayed you? Or would you open the case in the basement? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know what you would do. And while you're there, tell me which city or country you're watching from. It's amazing to see our community growing all over the world. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps me bring more of these dark, emotional thrillers to life for you. And tell me, what kind of story do you want next? More military revenge? A psychological mystery? Or maybe a story about a betrayal so deep it tears a family apart. Let me know what you crave, and I'll write it. Until then, stay safe, watch your back, and I'll see you in the next epic story.